Don't do the wife.
Oh.
Yeah, don't do the wife.
Promise? Oh. Yes, sir. Good to see you. You are. He always is looking snappy, man. Got Jared.
We're not recording yet.
Like Solomon, the baby.
Not clear to me. I could see.
Underneath here.
Oh, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Hey.
That was, yep, Old Testament.
It's Old Testament.
Daniel.
Oh, yeah, I like it.
He knows, Dave.
You can't, the New Testament's no fun without the Old. Ah, that's right.
Don't ever bet on that.
Yeah.
It already cut off. I was there.
Oh,
Bet on.
Moses was really strong.
I got my.
They should have bring closing.
Hey, God, you hear this one?
Get my gavel. I'd like to call to order the King County Finance and Budget Committee meeting of Wednesday, March 26th at 9:02. We have a roll call, please.
Juby,
Be here.
Lewis,
Who's here?
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Burgess, Pepe. Leonard,
Leonard here.
Berman,
Herman's here.
Ross,
Roth here.
Pirog. She is online. You have an,
Thank you. Do we have any remote attendance requests? None whatsoever. We're all in attendance. Need approval of minutes of February 26th.
Mr. Caius's room, but not on, or not on the committee.
Okay. Approval of minutes from February 26th.
That be asked for unanimous consent.
Any opposition? Approved by unanimous consent. Public comments? I have two people signed up for public comments this morning. Number one is Michelle Bettig.
Hi, Michelle Bettag, St. Charles. I've been attending many of the town hall meetings across Kane County, listening to board members explain why it is a must that we get this retail tax passed in order to maintain a healthy and safe lifestyle here in Kane County. Some of the things that are not being told to the public are that we've increased our spending 88% in the last 4 years. Another thing that we are not telling the public are we have raised our taxes as of 11/2024, a matter of fact. Another untruth that we're not telling or not telling is that we have a $93 million in COVID money we received, 103 million in ARPA funds we received, 27 million windfall and interest income, and increased taxes as well. A definition of public safety is also changed a great deal since the beginning of the town hall meetings to the end. After looking at the statute, we can say that public safety includes, but is not limited to, crime prevention, detention, fire, fighting, police, medical, ambulance, etc. It's the but not limited to, because after the presentation in Elgin, where you see the lactation rooms and the leaky pipes, we can see that this is not necessarily what's being sold to the public. The 0.75% increase can be increased, and they're not explaining, unless people ask, that this will generate $51 million, which is a 47% increase in the general fund. Now, I could go on forever, but anyways, the public safety scare tactic is mind numbing when I come here to this building, and Chair Parag cannot be told no. some of the chair positions in this county cannot be told no. As of late, some things are being told no, but as if you look on this agenda today, there's a lot of departments that are not being told no. There should be a spending freeze. When we are in a special fund statute saying that, or I'm sorry, when the public is being told that this money is going to go into a special fund, that, required statute, that is not true. According to the Illinois Department of Revenue, David Harris, the board can decide wherever they want to put this money. And as we know, this is going to become a slush fund. This is a slush fund for projects. If we were truly broke, none of the projects that we would have seen on this agenda would have happened in the last year. The $40 million health building, the $110 million government campus, none of that would have even been considered if the slush fund of an increase of 47% income were true. One last thing. People of Kane County, they don't own their homes. They're renting it from you, and you're responsible to making it affordable for Kane County citizens. Thank you.
Good call. And next we have Brian Anderson.
Good morning, Brian Anderson, Sugar Grove. I know this is the Finance Committee, and I actually came to listen. I was not going to speak today on the record until I saw the board member Mavis Bates here from District 4. And so I thought I would come and get it on the record. So on Kane Connects, last night would have been the 9th, what I've called the awareness events of the Kane County board members presenting to John Q. taxpayers starting in Burlington and ending last night at Sugar Grove on why the citizens should vote yes. Well, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that the event last night was canceled. Why? And I'm not blaming each of you here in this room because all of you were not involved in the 3 or 4 board members that put this together. It was canceled last night, not because a board member knew the proper protocol, which she should or they should have. A citizen from Kane County, not me, called and said, wait a second, this is a polling location. You can't have an event here talking about voting and politics and why you should vote yes or no, because it's a polling location. And I actually got a chance to meet the citizen last night from Sugar Grove, and I thanked him for that, but I was baffled that the board did not know that. It could have been held in another location in Sugar Grove if you truly wanted to have John Q. taxpayer listen. I look at the small details. If you can't handle the small details, you certainly cannot handle the big details. I'm embarrassed for those people. And oh, by the way, the cow meeting should have been at 4, pushed to 3, so the people could get down to the Sugar Grove Library. Mavis Bates should have known that. That's on her. Thank you very much.
Report, Mr. Laughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you in person. We all appreciate your service for decades for our area. May I have your permission to put up a couple of slides?
Yes.
And I'll be brief.
All right.
Thank you. During the meetings, I've attended all but 2 of the awareness meetings. And I figure that this gathering in the Finance Committee is where we talk policy regarding finances. One of the things, the points that has been made that I feel just must be corrected on the record. I guess everybody has their opinion, is entitled to their opinion, but there are also facts that support different opinion. The opinion that I'm referring to is that the public is being told in my presence, which it's very hard to stay quiet in the back, but the tax freeze caused the need for the referendum, and that the county left money on the table during the tax freeze. This is just not an accurate assessment. The question, the first two slides show the actual historical record of how much tax relief was provided. The idea of, please excuse me, the idea that the premise of money was left on the table is that the money that we all earn, save, is that money belongs to the government. And like Mike Madigan once said in Springfield, and we'll tell the citizens, the taxpayers, how much they get to keep. That is not a matter of, it's a matter of whose money is this, and it's the taxpayers' money, and they pay taxes in. So we were in, if you send up the next slide, Blair, thank you. The amount of tax relief that was provided during the time to 2020 was 68.6 million. And then when you count the Forest Preserve and the county, it was 119 million. Those numbers were generated by, I figure the smartest two folks other than Joe Onsick during my time as board chairman were Terry Hunt, put the slides together, but the numbers came from Mark Armstrong. We're in such solid condition that not only were surpluses in each of those years, there were surpluses, more revenue than expense, and I'll show that in the next couple of slides, but we were also able to pay down the public debt, if you put up the next slide, by 70%. So during that time, we went from about 90 million down to about first 25 million, but then 32 million because of the multi-use facility was additional borrowing. But it went from 90 million to 32 million. So that's not a condition where, well, we need more money. No, we had surpluses, plus we paid down the public debt. You put up the next slide. This is from the January 29th report from the finance department. So it's not these are not my numbers. They're the county's numbers. If you take a close look at the blue columns are the revenue, the orange column are the expenses. It shows that between 2014 and 2012 or 2022, there was more revenue than expenses, so surpluses. It was a break even in 2023. And then unfortunately, you see the pattern that the orange column is more than the blue column, or for the deficits. Sometimes people talk about, if you put up the next slide, well, that's because it's net or gross of the CARES and ARPA money, which is just, in my opinion, disrespectful to the auditors. But either way, the pattern is the same as demonstrated in this slide. And then finally, if you put up the next slide, please, and this is the last that I'll show. When I hear that there was no increase, or there is no increase in the taxes and the revenue that the county has received, that's flat out false. Now, I have to assume that the people who are making those statements don't know better, because if they know better by what this chart says, they have to be lying to the people they're presenting to, and they can't possibly be lying to the taxpayers as politicians trying to get more money. But as you can see where it says more state tax revenue, and again, these are reports that come to you, board members, which show other taxes, which are the state sales tax and income tax, basically, went from about 28 million to 37 million. So about $9 million. So that's all I have on that one. To sit in those meetings and listen to the misdirection that's being given, it actually has made me physically ill. I've lost a couple of nights sleep, or no sympathy, but it's like, at least be close. And you cannot possibly know can possibly know what you're talking about as you're presenting to these people. Because if you know, and you're still saying what you're saying, you have lied, and you should, that's a shameful kind of thing. So
Good morning, this is
enough
Jim.
on that.
I'm calling to let you know that after this recent annual, if you have Medicare.
I'll go through this very quickly. It won't take more than 5-6 minutes. So if you'll go to page 7. So page 7 of the monthly report. Thanks, Blair. And I'll just touch on these, just draw attention to page 7 is just the monthly report. We are starting to decrease the amount. It's about 1.4 million total interest income. That's still on a pace of about $17 million of interest income per year. Next slide. This is performance against benchmarks, and everybody can study it. It's part of the submitted report. We continue to be ahead of the benchmarks for both short-term and long-term performance. Next slide is number 9. I have shifted some of the balances between the two managers. Both of the managers are doing wonderful work, in my opinion. I'm very grateful to Dale and Bill, who sat in on the meetings of the original selection of both Vectors and PFMAM. They're doing beautiful work. I've shifted a little bit more into, or a significant amount more into Vectors with higher return. Then pages 10 through 15 are the detail that go into the report. Then page 16, I've started a new presentation of information to show you where we were a year ago versus the balance now. So this chart shows you obviously the difference between February 29th of 24 and February 28th of 25. You'll see that your balances are now down by $24 million, about a 5 to 6% decrease, plus the additional 21 million of additional interest income that has been generated, practically a windfall. But $20 million times 5% means that you have $1 million less to spend because of using up the fund balances. We've gone into a new phase. If you would go to page 20. Page 20 and 21, but 20 captures it. We now are, because we're spending down balances in accounts every time Carlos Mata, who's helped us for 29 years at King County, a wonderful person to work with. He and Jeannie Lifka present how much we have in the different accounts and then what the interest earned are so that we rationalize and pick the lowest interest earning accounts to transfer the money in to take care of the spending obligations that are created. Page 22. Once again, Vectors has been recognized. One of your managers has been recognized as one of the top 10 in the country for what they do. Page 24. Again, this is the windfall of interest income and where it goes. The answer is it's spread out among the people who manage 250 funds. And the question still remains, well, then what are those people doing with those funds? And basically the answer is you have nothing to show for it as board members. I was challenged publicly. I sit in the back seat. I keep my mouth shut, except where, like in my own area, where I'm a taxpayer. And I'm challenged on, let's see, that we can't aggregate all of the interest income and what happened to the study of the outside law firm. And that just came in either yesterday or the day before. I'm going through its 5 pages. It was very well done. I thought that the state's attorney's office, Stephen Ford, did an excellent job on the first study. I would have stated the conclusion a little differently, but he did an excellent job. A lot of it was confirmed by the outside agency, but they dug more deeply. I think the bottom line that you'll find when you study it and read it for yourself is that between 40 and 50% of all that, the fund interest in those various funds that aren't obligated or come from fees or levies, that you can aggregate it. Where I come from, half a loaf will be about, I think about 12 million out of that. That's a lot of money that you'll have at your disposal. And let's see. Oh, just one other item I included because it's so important to the environment of what the interest rates are. If you go to page 26, these are the interest figures according to the usinflationcalculator.com, and it's consistent across different sources. But this is the impact over 4 years of inflation, that if you had savings or earnings of $1 back in 21 and you take it to 2024, the dollar is now 82.5 cents. So you've literally lost 20% of the purchasing power or the savings that you work so hard to generate. This is what drives up interest rate. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lawson, thank you for your report. I think though, in the future, I think we're going to limit you to your report only and not your history lessons and whatever. I think that sometimes I feel that it's more partisan. It's the way that you look at things, and I don't know whether you should have a pulpit to express those things. You have to realize that, you know, where we are as a board and where we are as a county with our budget is something we didn't do in a vacuum. Every decision that was made to get us to where we are today was made by the board, by all 24 members. So some in favor, some against it, but we arrived at this situation because of our somewhat to our partisanship, but also to our cooperation. So, but it was not done in a vacuum. And I think that we've taken a good responsibility over the years to get to this point. So, but I appreciate you very much. You've done a fantastic job as treasurer. I'm going to limit you in the future though to just report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir.
if I have a legal question, I'm going to go to my professional, in this case being the state's attorney. And I listen to what he has to say. I view Mr. Lawson or whomever is in that role in the finance capacity to also give that flavor. If there's a partisan flair in there, then let's go ahead and focus and remove that. But I'm very much hoping that we are not trying to stifle information that's coming from whomever our professional is, whether that be legal, whether that be finance, you know. I appreciate that. And in this particular case, Chris, I appreciate you being able to dumb it down to my level sometimes, because sometimes when Kathy or Joe Onsick, who I respect enormously, would give reports, sometimes it's hard for me to rise to their level. So I appreciate sometimes that coming down to something that's a little bit easier for me to grasp. But Mr. Berman, if there's a partisan portion there, let's do that. But I'm very much hoping that we listen to all of our professionals. You know, and John, if you had something that you saw trending out there, that you would not hesitate to come to us and say, this is what we're seeing from a legal perspective on things. So just for what it's worth, sir.
The question is this the pulpit for that? Is this the point where it should be done? Or should it be done at a full county board meeting with all 24 members? If we want to get educated, let's educate all of us, not just the finance committee. Yes.
So, my personal opinion, what Cliff said was that we respect the treasurer for his professional opinion. He's got credentials. He's done an excellent job managing finances when he was a senator, when he was a county board. chair and certainly now as a treasurer. What I take objection to is the fact that I think it's very unprofessional when we get reports and they've got little scribbles in the corner saying nonsense or not true or those sort of things. The facts are the facts, put them out there, and let us judge that. I don't appreciate the other things. I think that's unprofessional. I can't imagine Mark Armstrong turning us in a report that's got little scribbles on the side. So that's just my opinion on it.
Oh, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Treasurer Lawson, I just had a question on, I think it was the first slide that you showed, and it had the graphs of the revenues and expenditures. And in some of the, maybe it wasn't the first. One more. Yeah, it was this one. So in the last 2 years on this chart, it's showing the expenditures going beyond the revenues. And it seemed, maybe I'm just misinterpreting what you said. It seemed like you were saying it didn't have to do with CARES and the ARPA money, but I guess my question is, what is your understanding of why the revenues are so much higher than the expenses are so much higher than the revenues in those years?
If I'm allowed to give my opinion, well, and first of all, I gave two charts, one net of ARPA and COVID, and the other, the second slide, because I've heard, well, it has to do with COVID, ARPA. I gave both slides of county information that shows that under either before or after, or with or without, the pattern is still the same. My answer to your question is the spending habits of the board in the last 2 years. It's the spending habits. It's less a revenue problem than it is a spending problem. The reason why I put these on today's, these are not political statements. These are factual statements from the proponents of people who want more money from the taxpayer. And when I'm told, and I established what the question was that I was trying to answer, that our taxpayers are being told, is that the referendum is needed because of what happened more than 5 years ago, and that's just not true. There were surpluses up until, as the chart shows, 2022, and then in 2023, it was break even. It's the last 2 years spending. And I'm sorry, Jarrett, I believe that it's the lack of fiscal discipline by the majority of people who decide, and I think that Dale is right, that these have been group decisions by the folks who control the majority of the Kane County Board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On a positive note of these reports that Mr. Lawson presented, I'm really encouraged to realize that the rate of return he got on our money, specifically in the last 2 years, outpaced inflation. So even though in the normal situation, dollars worth in 2021 is now worth 82.5, that's not true with the county, and we can thank Mr. Lawson for that.
Very good. Any other comments? Yes, John.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Good to see you, by the way. I guess I might agree with Ms. Lewis on how comments are delivered, maybe orally, not in writing, but that's one style. But I will say that bad news is really important to deliver. In my career as a financial advisor, I had some very uncomfortable conversations being honest with people about their habits, spending habits usually. And, you know, so if the board is doing something, if committee or committees are doing something, we need the professionals like sitting in this audience, upstairs, downstairs, other buildings, to be bluntly obvious, you know, honest with us and tell us what's going on. If we ignore it, we ignore it. But I think it's good, Mr. Chair, if the whole board can hear it, but I think this committee drives much of what happens. So it's important to start here.
Thank you. Moving on. The auditor's report, Ms. Wegman.
Good morning. My report is on file as usual. However, we did send out our quarterly report. It is a new updated format. So I'm hoping that it's a little bit more comprehensible than the previous format. I can answer any questions.
Any questions of our auditor? Thank you. We have a resolution approving the February 2025 claims paid of $10,150,296.31. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move Surges.
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez, second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Juby,
Aye.
Lewis,
Woods, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Herman.
Kermit, yes. And item number 8, a finance director's report, Kathy Hopkinson.
The executive director's report is on file. I'll just go over the state of a few processes for the benefit of the county and the finance committee. The budget process, we typically have started by now for the next fiscal year, but based on the discussions in the executive committee, we're going to wait until April to start the budget process, but we are prepared to work with all the departments to as soon as we get that go ahead and start the budget process. Also, the 2025 budget book, we should have that finished by Monday. As you know, the budget was adopted in November, but our actual budget book is a compilation of not just all of the schedules of financial information, but it also incorporates narratives from all the departments. We've been working to collect that, so we hope to have that done by Monday. The audit process continues. We're in the midst of the 2024 annual audit. We are hoping to get it finished on time, which is May 31st. We've got some transactions from some offices out there that are a little bit behind schedule that may impact the completion of the audit, but we are pushing hard to get that done. Also, if you look through the packet, the report, one of the things I want to just highlight is what we do in the finance department. We work with all the departments across the county. We collect information from all the departments across the county. We've been working towards doing a monthly close. We've been holding trainings. We've held a multitude of trainings over the last 6-7 months on financial reporting, budgeting, accounts receivable. We encourage everyone to continue to participate in these trainings. We're going to offer more, and we need to hear from you on what more trainings you'd like to accomplish, because that all feeds into getting timely information. One of our big hurdles is getting information on time. So if we can continue to train everybody to get that information in on time, that will be good for financial reporting overall. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions of yes, John?
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Kathy, I can't remember which meeting it was, but you were talking about the software used for budgeting and that it doesn't allow changes without starting all over again. And I didn't know if you'd had time to chat with IT or anybody else to see if it's possible for us to do something will allow us to look at options.
So our software, which is the software that we use, New World Systems, we can have a budget and then you can make changes to that budget. But you can't have two simultaneous different scenarios at a time where you're making changes to both of those scenarios. We've been looking at other softwares out there. There's pros and cons. Some of the softwares that exist are so amazing to people who are accountants and finance people. We're like, oh, this is so cool. We could do this. We could do this. We could do this. But we're also dealing with everybody across the county who's not in the weeds like we are every single day. And so that's something to be considered. Plus putting in a new software would be probably a 2-year project. Easily. So options could be, we've done things like this over the years, you know, doing stuff on spreadsheets. People could, you know, keep different versions on spreadsheets, but at the end of the day, what's easiest and most efficient is to do, to give clear instructions to the departments. This is how you build your budget. They build that budget. The board has the total power to revise that budget. And then once it's in the system already, we process it and it's posted. But we can build a budget and make revisions to that budget, but we can't have 2 simultaneous alternative scenarios in the current software that we have. We did think about it. One thought was, could we do a separate version in our test? Because we have production and we have test. When we try out new things, we do them in test mode to see how they work. That would be really complicated because that would actually involve a lot more work. And the test mode would have to be exactly up to date, and people need the test mode to do other things. So I think the most straightforward way is just clear guidance, hold everybody to that guidance, and then make changes at the board's direction.
So just
Kathy, with all due respect, in the time that I've been sitting on this board, our software seems antiquated and it's time. And John, while we keep having these conversations, the conversations never give a deadline or an expectation. It's difficult for me as an executive on a multi-million-dollar board to be told, this is the way I want you to do your budget, and be scolded about. I would rather have the option via software to say, this is a plan A, B, and C. And Kathy, this is not directed as a criticism towards you, but toward our software. And if we're ever going to get out of this quagmire, great. It probably can't happen for this cycle. But if the goal is 2 years from now, then what steps are we taking? And no offense, but there's always going to be a crisis. There's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be some obstacle that we need to overcome. But at some point in time, if we have a little bit of a lull right now, I'm sure there's lots of qualified salespeople that would like to do a demonstration for us and come out and say, here you go. Here's 3 different options. This is what the costs are. Are you willing to budget for it? And then let us decide, is there an advantage to that differentiator? And is it worth the dollar figure to do that? But to be told, you know, politely, shut up, sit down and do your job. I am politely standing up and saying, no, I've asked you for a software that's better, that gives me options to work with, and I don't have it. And so I want to voice that opinion just for what it's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have a question for Ms. Hopkinson and then for Mr. Franks. And I'd like Ms. Hopkinson to respond first and then Mr. Franks. With respect to the interest that has been earned in the last couple of years, it's been substantial, as we have seen. It's projected this year to be at about $16 million. Instead of allocating that $16 million over 250 different departments without any responsibility to show how they spend the money or what they use it for, couldn't we reallocate that, all of that interest earned to the general fund? And the reason why I asked that question is, about a year ago, I had asked you, Ms. Hopkinson, if we could reallocate the interest earned from the ARPA money, and you told me no. and then
No,
came back.
we
Yes,
we
you-
have 2
it's
years
on-
in a row.
It's on the record though, but you said no, and then. you
Oh, I
came
never
back
said
and
that.
Well, anyhow, I'm not going to argue the point with you. The bottom line is you came back and said, yeah, we can. So if we can do it with ARPA, why couldn't we do it with all the interest? And if we can't, I'd like to know why, because as a governing body, if we have the ability to infuse our budget with $16 million of additional revenue in our general fund, that would tremendously help the situation we're in right now.
I have to follow the state's attorney's opinion
Mr.
on interest earned.
So if you recall from the report we gave, there is kind of two general types of accounts that the county has. One where the money is derived from that account, where the interest comes from that account. And then there's ones where the money was ultimately originally from the general fund, made its way over to a special revenue account or whatever it would be. And then that interest could theoretically flow back. ARPA is a perfect example where it's federal money that came in, it kind of flowed through. And there's no state or federal regulations that prevents the money from being used in that way. So ARPA, without question, in that report said could be used to brought back for the general fund. The issue that we kind of pointed out was when you're talking about special revenue funds where the money that's being accrued through the interest of the investment is from money that was, basically gotten from that thing, whether it be fees or whatever, that benefit needs to stay in that account. Now, money's fungible. Could you use that interest income to say, well, that money, helps towards that account and then account for less in the general fund? Absolutely. But can you physically move the money over? No. And so that's ultimately at the end of the day where our opinion is. Now, my understanding from Mr. Lawson is that there's been a deeper review and that there may be accounts further down the road that might be available. We were never asked to look at a holistic of the entire number of accounts, because if you look, there's a massive number of them. But from a general perspective of the largest dollar ones, what we've essentially said is that if the money derived or originally came from the general fund or there's no legal limitations on it, yes, that can flow back. But if it's not from that and then the money was accrued through the special revenue, it needs to stay there. Now, if you want to do it through accounting processes of where you offset that interest, that's a way to do it. But there's no other way to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Franks. I think that is specifically what I'm looking at. If in fact they receive the monies that are earned from the treasurer back into their department, can't we reallocate or lessen the amount that the general fund gives to those departments by that amount?
So we tried to do that in last year's budget. So the funds, and there are a few small funds in the county that there is a state statute that says you can't take the interest. Motor fuel tax is one of them, and some of the impact fee funds, which are also under the transportation department. The funds with the largest cash amounts at King County are the general fund, all of KDOT's funds, the ARPA fund, although that's dwindling right now because it has to be spent by 2026. Those are sort of the largest buckets of where the cash is. And we have a formula. So every month the interest is allocated based on a percent to total. So the largest funds get the most amount of interest because they had the most cash. In last year's budget or the 2025 budget process, the original draft of the budget included taking some of the RTA sales tax transportation funds from transportation department and moving that to general fund. In an executive committee meeting, the county board decided to take that out of the budget process. And so those are options. Those are options. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to I was talking to Roger when the comment was from Mr. Surgis regarding the software. And he looked at me, he said approximately that'll cost about, it is possible that we can have software that'll have dual budgets that we can work with. I believe was mentioned very briefly that DuPage had something similar that they just purchased. and it was around $5 million. I'm just throwing that number out there. If this is something that we'd like to do, as a board, we may want to go out for a request for a proposal to take a look at what their software is and then make a decision going forward if we're, with the committee to purchase that software and then, change that over so that there can't be multiple budgets going on at the same time. And I'm just sharing information with no opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments, Madam Chair. In fact, I had mentioned to Ms. Bates that I thought it would be about 10 million for the software we need. My only question, whether it's 5 million or 10 million, is where do we get the money?
Yeah. Well, I'm just sharing.
No, and I'm not asking you specific, I'm just saying, we are in a budget crunch right now. Unfortunately, it would be a wonderful thing to do, and I think it would help. But I think at this point, we probably have to work with what we have until we get our budget in balance.
I'm in complete agreement. It could be an aspiration.
And-
And it's a good one.
And I will say this, the software, it gets the job done. There's no software in my entire career. There's no software that does everything that you want it to. It's kind of the 80-20. It gets the job done. There's lots of cool software out there. We've done demos. There's lots of cool stuff out there. Of course there is. Yeah.
That's very accurate comment. Any other questions of Ms. Hopkinson? Thank you very much. Moving on, new business. Item B. Where's the A is a resolution amending the King County Police related to travel or policy related to travel. I have a motion to approve that. I want to.
Surges moved.
Leonard will second.
All right, now any discussion? Discussion on this? Something new and something we've all been interested in.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Juby, oh, I'm sorry, you're.
It's okay.
Sanchez's head was in.
Oh, Derek, you need to be a bobblehead.
Good looking.
So I attended the Human Service Committee meeting where we talked about this. And I know that it was a very rich conversation, and it was determined to send a policy through for the county board members, but also and on our resolution, it actually doesn't reference the chair. It only references the county board members, but on the actual policy on page 19-5, it references the chair and the county board members. So I don't understand why that isn't reflected in the resolution.
Mr. Berman, I think Ms. Labrillo might be able to weigh in just a little bit. And Jamie, do not allow me to put words in your mouth. If you're not comfortable with this, we can ask the state's attorney.
You can certainly add it to the resolution if you want. The resolution, whereas is just establish why we wrote the policy. It adopts the policy as written in Exhibit A, so it adopts the policy that's there. So if you want that included, I would see no reason why you couldn't just add that if you want that included for clarity.
Okay, I'd like to make an amendment if it's possible with the state's attorney's nod, yes or no, if it's not acceptable. But I would like to make an amendment. Where is it? Local government.
Section F.
It's on page 355. Where it says also provides that county board member expenses may, oh, no, that's not it either. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Whereas the Kane County Code Section 2-72 travel expenses generally provides for reimbursement for the expenses of county board members. And I would like to add the county board chair. And then in the following, whereas it is necessary to amend Section F of the King County.
Are you still on 355?
No, it's 350.
On 354, sorry.
Got it.
Whereas it's necessary to amend section F of the King County Financial Policies Travel Policy to include an approval process and additional limitations for county board members and county board chair outlined in Exhibit A. And I think that's the only two places that it needs to be added because it's reflected on page 367 as it includes the county board chair. I just feel our resolution should match our policies.
So I'm fine with all that with one distinction. Do not put county or county chairwoman after the word and, put it before under the first whereas it should say, whereas the King County Code, section 272, travel expenses generally provides for reimbursement for the expenses of county board members and the county chairwoman, or however you want to do it, and then semicolon and. So that and is not substantive. That's purely procedural to get to the next whereas. So just put that inside of that. And then otherwise, yeah, I'm good with all of it.
Sturgis.
So John, if I can address John directly. Leslie, my interpretation, and this is just me, when it says county board, that would incorporate the 24 of us and the 25th person being the chair. Am I mistaken on that?
No, the position of chairperson is completely separate from the county board. The county board is only the 24 members.
I apologize. This generated from my committee, and that was not my interpretation. And thank you for that catch. That I just made the giant assumption that embodied this group.
So did Ms.
Yes, Mr. Leonard.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So did Ms. Juby make a motion for this amendment?
Yes.
If she did, then I would like to second it.
Very good. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention that in the actual code, it says reimbursement for expenses of county board members, elected officials, and county employees. So it doesn't mention the board chair specifically, it just says elected officials.
Yeah, so our own internal rules can say whatever we want as long as it's clear what we mean. But if we're talking about, is the chairwoman a part of the county board? Legally speaking, no. But if you say that the county board, when used as a defined term, could include her, you can do that as part of your policy. It's really up to you.
Duly noted.
I had the same feeling.
Clear as mud.
Idea of you, Mr. Sturgis, that this is included in the county board. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think actually I understand where Mr. Sturgis was coming from. I think a number of people felt that way, but I think by defining it specifically, we won't have this discussion down the road. So I think it's well worth moving ahead with.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more thing I wanted to add. I'm excited to see this going forward and the conversations that'll happen at exec and potentially at the full county board. I think that's really where it needs to happen, but we're shaping it a little bit as we go. So I don't want to make an amendment today, but I do kind of want to put out there that I do think if we're going to reimburse for travel, for events and things like that, that's fine. I would prefer to see some kind of report or summary given before we approve the reimbursement, so we know what is the value of that expenditure. Is it, for lobbying? Is it like I've gone to training for UCCI down in Normal, and that was, it was a good benefit to me, and it made me a better board member. So if it, whatever the value added is, I would like to see something eventually included in this that requires that.
Jay, the biggest conversation on this was consistently that this may not be perfect, but it's a starting point, and I hope we can continue to build on it over, as it matures. So
Call the vote.
We should be talking about the
Amendment.
amendment, and we should vote on whether we're going to accept it or not. And before we talk about adding more things or not adding more things, we haven't finished that layer of business yet.
I need to finish my coffee first, so I lost track.
So let's,
See you tomorrow.
let's stop discussing on our amendment and vote on it.
Juby, Juby,
Yeah.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Sturgis,
yes.
Pepe,
Happy, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. Pretty good. Now we're at the main motion as amended. Any discussion, further discussion on that? Call the,
Wait.
yes, I'm sorry.
So in answer to Mr. Sanchez, there is a form in here that it's called King County Travel Purpose and Evaluation. And you put who, your name, your travel date, the event, purpose and benefit of the county. Then when you get back, there's a little section on it that says, was it good? Was it bad? So there is that little evaluation piece in there that I'm assuming you turn in with your expense factors. So at least they're trying to, add to it.
Okay. Here's a comment. Roll call, please.
Juby,
Aye.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges,
Yes.
Tepe,
Debbie, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Yes. Thank you. Resolution B is a resolution authorizing new job position and emergency budget adjustment to Fund 101 for the GIS Technologies Department, $78,297. Do we have a motion to approve?
Juby moves.
Zuby,
Sanchez seconds.
Mr. Sanchez, discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
I'll
Sorry,
just
there you
start
go.
waving.
I got a
Um,
move like it.
That's okay. I just wanted to make a comment that, the reason why I am supporting this is because it's a position funded by fees. And so it's not, to my understanding, unless I'm wrong, it's not going to be more money. We don't have to find money for it. That we had originally had the job opening, it didn't get filled, it was removed from the budget. Now we've increased our fees. The fees can now sustain this position.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, just one question on that. I understand that the fees are supposed to support the appropriation amount in the amount of 78,297. Do we have any verification or guarantee or commitment to show that this will be fully funded?
Roger?
Electrostock. All right, good morning. This is Roger Fonstock from IT Building Management. This is a GIS position. GIS is funded from a special recorder's fee. We did a fee study and increased the fee in response to some of the fiscal constraints. The position was removed from the budget, and now we're trying to add it back in kind of after the fee study was done. It's been a reliable revenue stream off of recorded deeds and property transactions for more than, I think, 25 years. The projection on the revenue this year would easily sustain the position for future years as well. There's always an issue of whether or not, you have as many recorded properties, and we try to adjust the GIS budget accordingly. So we'll bring the expenses down to match the fee revenue, or we'll bring new services or new software on if money's available. So that's how that works, but it's funded, and we would foresee that it's funded in the future. And if not, it would become a part of our budget request.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Roth here. I think Roger reported on that in the last admin meeting. showing that-
Charles did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is in the record.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, I'm Roger, whatever. So right now, these fees would pay for this. Does that include benefits and all that other stuff? And if it does cover all that, have we built in an inflation feature? Because I'm assuming this person would not want to be paid the same salary for the rest of their life.
Yes. Is that better? Yes. It'll be a part of the fee structure and the revenue that we project every year. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Juby,
Aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges,
Yes.
Tepe,
Debbie, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Yes. Next is item C, a resolution authorizing reimbursement to the Kane County Sheriff's Office for costs expended for the administrative wing project, resolution number 23-394 of $205,179.62.
Leonard will move.
Leonard moves,
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez second. Ms. Hopkinson has said that there is a reference in here to the Finance Committee, and it's her impression that it should be the audit. Ms. Kathy?
Yeah, the last paragraph says, ask the finance department to process payments. The finance department does not process payments for the county.
Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know all the details. I've tried to get up to speed on what's going on. I've received information as late as yesterday about this. I guess my question is, why in the world has it taken us over a year to reimburse the sheriff?
I don't know.
Who's responsible, I guess, is maybe a better question.
If the sheriff submitted a request, like all other offices that submit invoices, they submitted an invoice in the normal process to the county auditor's office last year.
Mr. Roth?
Roth here. I don't have all the facts, but some of the things I've heard is this was originally spent out of a sheriff fund, which wasn't the proper fund to pay out of. And I guess my question, what are we doing to fix the process so it doesn't happen again? Because it should have been out of the fund we're trying to reimburse out of. And no one's here from the sheriff, but it was.
So let's just kind of put this all out there. We've gotten to a point where the sheriff has, I don't know why, but ultimately the sheriff's office made a kind of an executive decision to get these people paid. I don't know what the hangup was or why he felt like it was taking too long, but he did it. He then submitted a personal expense voucher that, while not, I would say, immediately obvious of why, upon further review is a legal process. Essentially what's going on is if like I spent $100 that was towards county business, I would submit a personal expense voucher. In this case, it's literally the sheriff himself submitting an expense voucher, not Ron Hain, but the sheriff submitting an expense voucher of funds that his office expended and seeking county board reimbursement. We've talked to buildings management. They agree that the money is owed back to the sheriff. It was money that would have ultimately been paid out. And when this first question came up last year, the question was posed to us whether or not this would be allowed to do it through a PEV. The answer we gave was, unfortunately, yes. You do not have a policy as it currently stands to define a limit on a PEV. So if somebody wanted to submit a PEV for $20 million, theoretically they could. Doesn't mean they get it, but they could submit it. And it is a process that could go forward. If you don't like that process, change the policy. And so my understanding from the way this kind of developed was there was essentially a roadblock. That roadblock kind of began and ended with the process of submitting it through. I don't know who was the roadblock. I don't frankly care, but it was a roadblock. I've been asked this about 1 million times of how to get it through. I've given people about 3 or 4 different options. Nobody seems to want to move it forward. So my office took the executive decision to essentially work with buildings management to just put this resolution through. The whole point is to get all of you to just simply say, get it done. And if that's not enough for everybody, then I'll deal with it. In talking with the auditor, she will look a minor change to this. I think it's worthwhile to make that change. But at the end of the day, like all this is directing that this gets processed through. And so if we can just do it, then that way we can move on. There's nothing illegal about this. It might not be perfect on financial policy wise, but it is something that should be paid back. There's no disagreement. No one seems to have a problem with that. It's just the question of logistics of getting it through.
I guess the question is the reference to the finance department versus the auditor as to where approval comes from.
Frankly, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, the auditor has no authority to refuse a payment if the county board agrees to it, and neither does the finance director. Let's be honest about this. They don't. If the board wants to pay something, it's purely ministerial at that point. The auditor has the right to recommend a refusal to you, but that's as far as it gets. And that's the same for the finance director. So if it's submitted through the normal course, and yes, you guys do have financial policies that should be followed, but those don't trump legal liability. Those don't trump ordinance and statute. So what I'm saying here at this point is there's no legal reason why the county board can't go forward with this thing. And this thing has been hung up for so long at this point, it just needs to move forward. I'm happy to answer all the questions in the world, but at the end of the day, the sheriff did pay $200,000 on the county's behalf, and it should be reimbursed.
I just want to say a couple things. Again, the county finance department does not process invoices. We don't.
So if we're getting into a legal description of what the definition of process is, that is not how this works. Process is a generic term to do unto itself of what you can do to process this. So we've made that very clear to everyone involved. And if there's a discrepancy on this, sure, we can make a change, but it doesn't need to overhaul the whole thing to a point where we're having to belabor this point in front of everyone.
Right, but I'm trying to understand why we need to change the process to pay this invoice. And then just to point out, custodial funds are not county monies. They're not special revenue funds. That's all.
Mr. Tip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure I understand this. This is an expense that had not been put before this committee. This is an expense that was paid some time ago out of another fund. Am I correct with that?
So the gist of this is this was already an approved capital project that was already taken care of. And the payment to the contractor was done by the sheriff. The last payment of the contract to the sheriff was paid by the sheriff. So it would have normally been processed through Buildings Management Capital Projects Fund, but it was done ultimately through the sheriff, and then he's seeking reimbursement from the Capital Projects Fund.
But the capital project fund had been approved by the board.
Yes.
Okay, so this was just paid in a different manner, and now we're looking to reimburse that account.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Juby and Mr. Sanchez had their hand raised and they're on the committee. You're up.
Okay, so as one of the 7 members of admin who passed this forward to finance, I guess I am going to beat a dead horse because in the resolution, it says that the state's attorney's office was asked to give an opinion. Who asked for the first opinion?
I don't recall, but without question, it would have been the auditor. I know I talked to the auditor and I know I talked to the finance director about whether this was proper to pass through a personal expense voucher.
And then who asked for the second opinion? Was it the same person?
The finance director, I think 4 or 5 months later, followed up on it.
So we have 2 opinions that we should go ahead and pay this. We had 7 board members say, yep, we need to get this paid. It's been going on for a year. Why are we still talking about this? If there's language we need to change for the auditor to make her happy, fine, we can do that. But otherwise, I just want to move this forward and pay this. And I don't see anything wrong with the word process. And I am a language and literature major, and you do process payments. If you want to take a little tiny definition, but that's not what we mean here. So I would like to just go ahead and
Call the vote.
call the vote.
Yeah. Thanks, speak. Swagon.
You can't. Once you call the vote, you got to vote.
We have to vote to call the vote unless
Yep.
it's unobjected to.
We modify the vote to call the vote?
No.
I'm joking, Bill. Sorry.
So there is a change in talking with the auditor that we would like made, but it's not related to what the finance director is asking for.
Bring it to exec.
For clarification, what we're voting on is what is currently in the packet, correct? With no changes as what went through from the admin committee.
Correct.
True.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Sanchez.
Yeah, just an interest in moving this along and just get this taken care of. There is an amendment that actually removed the word process. And I would move to amend this to replace the second, now therefore be a resolved clause. Should I read the whole thing, Mr. State's Attorney, Assistant State's Attorney, or it's been
So-
sent out?
So there, okay, if there's been a motion to call the vote, then you need to take, there's no discussion on it. It needs to be taken, but it's a 2/3, so.
Okay. Exec. Jay. Clean it up for exec. Whatever.
I have a question. What is it that the finance department would do? Because we don't process payments for the county.
We just want it paid.
So look,
Or we
here, can we
forget
just,
That's the county auditor that pays the bills
Why are you asking all the vote?
because it says the
Point
county
of order, we
finance
called the
department.
vote, please.
Yeah, we called a vote. We need to vote.
you need to take a vote on calling the vote.
We're going to vote. The original.
Calling the vote,
On calling the vote.
whether or not to stop
I'm calling
discussion.
it. Good. Ms. Wegman. Don't speak.
No,
There is no discussion.
I'm
We
gonna
have to
go
vote.
with whatever your attorney's
Mi-
telling you to do.
Mr. Chair. The motion to call the vote is a non-debatable vote, so you need to take the vote right now.
I love Robert's.
Do we need a second for the call the vote or just Surge's motion to call the vote? Sorry.
To be mentioned, motion, Surges seconds.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, let's, roll call please on the original resolution.
This is a roll call vote on calling the vote.
Yes, thank you.
Juby. Lewis.
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez. Surges.
Yes.
Pepe.
Pepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
I know.
5-2 it passed.
Thank you very much.
Then
Moving on.
No, Mr. Chair, now you take the actual vote.
317.
Pardon me?
Now you need to take the substantive vote.
On the resolution.
Resolution.
The last one was a
What was
motion.
the last one?
Calling the vote.
Oh,
Calling the-
To end debate.
Okay.
roll call please on
The actual resolution. Juby.
To be I.
Lewis. Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Surges.
Yes.
Pepe.
Pepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Passes.
Okay. Item, D. The resolution authorizing a number of procurement cards issued to the building management department and each of their transaction limits.
Surges moves.
Surges moves,
Leonard, second.
Leonard seconds, discussion. Roll call, please.
Juby.
To be I.
Lewis.
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Surges.
Yes.
Tepe.
Pepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. And item E is a resolution establishing an attrition program for the King County personnel. And I think maybe Jamie would like to,
Surges will move.
okay,
Leonard will
Surges moves.
second.
To be seconds.
Mr. Berman, if I may, before I would like to ask Ms. Labrillo to come up and explain this a bit. But again, I just want to caution and ask for a little kindness here. Jamie, we ask you so often to do stuff that nobody else wants to do and you get targeted as the bad guy. And no, and we get it. This isn't your opinion. This is what we asked you to do and thank you. You're not the bad guy here. There's no hate mail, just thank you. Yes, send it to me, exactly. I mean, the poor girl's getting.
Thank you,
destroyed on this.
Jamie.
So I was responding to board feedback and the provisions of this are feedback from the board members. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So I'm just explaining what was communicated to me to put in writing on behalf of this board. That this resolution puts in a hiring freeze for the King County departments. And then establishes a process whereby which department heads who feel they can't accommodate the vacancy and do need the position filled goes to a group of people that can evaluate if there's other resources within the county, such as general fund employees that can be moved into the position or any other kinds of accommodations that can be made within the county before a position is hired. So a lot of factors would go into that review, such as the funding source, if it's special revenue or grant funded. If the position that's been vacated has an essential skill that's unique and needs to be replaced for some compliance type of reason, or any other factors that the department head puts forward indicating why they need the position filled. So it is not up to this group to determine if the position has to be filled. It's up to them to determine the best way to fill it. I just want to make sure that's understood. And the intention being that when we've done hiring freezes in the past, we have not put in a separate process for how to address the situations where we do have to fill a position or we do need to make a hire. And as a result, those hiring freezes were ineffective. For example, we are actually currently under a hiring freeze right now. And so the approval process that's in is inconsistent from department to department. So it's really become a process whereby which the board doesn't really have the detailed information to solve the problem. So this is a way to get the detailed information to find the best way to solve the problems, pulled forward to the board and have that research done ahead of time so that they can make informed decisions on replacements.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Sturgis.
Comment? Jamie, we asked you, or maybe part of the directive was, let's not recreate the wheel, but pull something off the shelf that we've used in the past. My perception is you've not only done that, but you've suggested the tweaks that were needed to make this effective. And within there, the feedback that we've received the loudest, if you will, is that, and Mr. Isaacson, I made you a personal phone call here, that there seems to be a little bit of consternation, which we're trying to grapple with internally between grant-funded staff and general fund funded staff. And Michael, we are vibrantly aware of that and we're working our way through it, but it's going to be a process. And the second thing, Jamie, is we have not only have we implemented a process for this, but we're clearly saying this can be viewed as a case-by-case basis if there is that exception. Am I mistaken on any of that?
I believe it has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. I think the idea of never replacing any positions isn't realistic. We have business we have to get done, and we have compliance that we have to meet. And so some things just have to be done. And so it needs a review process.
So guys, we've taken our best shot at this. And I think what we have in front of us is maybe a great starting point. And Jared, per my earlier conversation, this might not be the end all be all, and maybe we have to mature this over time. But I think this is a great, solid base hit. Let's move this forward.
Mr. Stube.
I really appreciate the effort. I really do. I'm all for the idea that we look at things for attrition. I have two pretty serious problems with the way this is presented. One problem I have is that even though the intent is not there, it does appear that executive directors from finance and from human resources are now more important than an executive director of a department. And so I have a problem with that. Even if that's not the intent, even if they're in there for their subject matter expertise, the executive director who put forth the opinion was hired for their subject matter expertise. So I have some problem with that.
Do you have a solution for that?
Well, not yet, but I don't think this is ready. I don't think we've had enough time. I think this is our first blush, and I didn't want to redline everything, but I don't think it's ready to move forward. I think it needs to go back, and these are the reasons why I think it needs to go back. So my second issue is grant funding. And I know that a lot of times, I don't want to say we abuse grant funding, but I know that sometimes maybe grant funding isn't used the way we think it should be. Maybe some of the jobs don't sunset or whatever. However, having been a member of another governing body and authorizing high-level staff in this other governmental body to be able to approve grants, either putting them out or accepting them because of time constraints, I feel that it's very, very important for our executive directors to be able to maintain their autonomy over accepting and processing grants, because they are the ones who know what they need them for. I don't want to lose something because it has to go through a process that maybe doesn't jive with the timeline, which apparently I wasn't aware of until yesterday, that could happen. So I would also like to see that challenged again. So I would actually like to make a motion to send this back to Human Services, because while we have great bones, I don't think it's ready to move forward yet without more discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'll remove my motion. Whoever seconded it. Juby,
I happily remove my second.
in which case I would ask that it be sent back to committee.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Second. I'll second that. Or
The second is to send it back to committee.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I want to point out, I completely agree with Ms. Juby on both her points. Very well stated. Okay. I totally believe that all of this is done with the best efforts. Okay. I don't think there's anybody who's saying anybody is at fault or trying to do something. I think all of this is being done with the intent of being fair and appropriate and providing a process. However, I believe that this has to be a board process and not a process of managers. And how we do that, I'd be happy to be involved in the conversation if I could. Like Ms. Juby, I don't have the answer for it now, but to me, it should be a board process so that we don't have the problem with managers. There's too much cooperation that goes on within this county that I think it's our job to keep that level of cooperation really working. And that's the reason I totally agree with sending this back to committee, but I also agree that this should be something of prime importance. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. I have concerns about this, and I believe that the directors of the departments have serious concerns. For one thing, and I'm just agreeing, and it's already been sent back, so I'll be brief. But I want to say this before it gets sent. Well, I have a half a page of notes, so give me a break here. Give me a minute. I believe that this would only affect the non-elected departments anyway. And so that's an inequity that would be going on. It could delay hiring a good candidate, which sometimes you have to nab and not wait for the next meeting of the evaluation committee. I want to hear from the directors about this before it is turned into our process. I believe that our directors are the experts here and would know what they need better than we would. And it does put, as you said, HR and finance above the other departments.
Chair.
I would, I think we're all in agreement with the issue that we're having with putting department heads in charge of managing other department heads and their hires. This is a board function to make these decisions, not that of the finance committee or the HR committee. But what I would like to recommend to expedite this, if we could select and they can select it amongst themselves, a department head who confers with other department heads and bring that report to Human Services. So that, I like that idea. And they can act as a representative of, to bring their concerns to the next Human Services Committee for questions, answers. So that they can get their opinion, because they are impacted. And I know that they do have some concerns about this. And the last thing I want to do is to have two of our department heads considered above others when they're all equal. It is the board who's in charge of who gets hired.
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to host lunch in a conference room and invite everybody in, and let's just get this done. This will take less than an hour, and let's get everybody's concerns and move this forward. And Ms. Juby, we started this by saying nobody's the bad guy here, but we are facing some challenges that need, our big boy pants on. And while we're going to try and take everybody's concerns, this is something that needs to be moved forward. So let's just get everybody in a room and not prolong this and I mean, if we're talking pizzas, let's go and let's get this done. So with your blessings, let's send it back and we'll have something as fit. Jimmy John's it is, so.
Point of order, when is the lunch?
That's what caught my attention, lunch. That Subway or is that?
Am I next? All right.
John?
Since everybody's weighing in, oh, I'm sorry. Since everybody's weighing in, even though it's already gone back to Human Services, I'm gonna do it too.
We didn't vote on it.
We haven't voted on it yet.
I know. So my half-page notes, I'll condense. My first thing was I wasn't sure what this evaluation process is gonna look like. I know we're having a panel, but is there gonna be any criteria for how we're gonna evaluate it? Was my first question. My second thing was, we had, the vice chair of the board, the executive director of finance, and the human resources, and then another ad hoc member appointed by the county chair. I would like that ad hoc member to be month by month, whoever the board chair is. So if it's a position that's coming under jobs, that I would be that ad hoc member that month. If it's coming under whoever, yeah, because that should be the person amongst the board that gets to fight for the people below. And then one other thing that's not really related to this process, but I would like to eventually discuss when we have grant funded jobs and we're sunsetting them, would it be possible, and it doesn't have to be a big presentation, but I know that you guys have to do final reports to HUD. I'm looking at you, sorry, because you're here. You guys do final reports to HUD or DCEO or whoever. I would really like to see those final reports to see, well, what did we get from that 2 years of grants? You know, did we really come up with some great ideas or wasn't it? And I think that would, you know, so that we don't just say it's grant funding, so we don't care, because we do care. So, all right.
I like both. Very good.
Thank you. Very good.
Mr. Chair, I would assume that hopefully we can get the lunch set up before the next committee meeting. That would be great. I'll even cook for it. But I think expediting this would be good. And if I could call the question, which I can't, I would, but.
Just thinking of the purview, part of the purview of the executive committee is, you know, the hiring and of department heads, and this conversation revolves around them. Would it make more sense to just send this to executive to have this conversation at that level?
It delays it by a week.
When is exact?
It's April 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
We can have a lunch before the next exec and have something ready for you then, guaranteed.
But
Yeah, we're trying to expedite this, Madam Chair. We're happy to do that.
with those, all right, but then I
mean, does it have to be like a scheduled luncheon because of
we can't
the meeting
only,
act, or, you know?
we have Open Meetings Act concerns, so it could only be 2 board members in that room.
Call a special meeting of Human Services for a 1-hour luncheon.
I agree to that.
You need 48 hours, so don't leave, so we can literally cannot leave. We'll have to get that meeting held.
Look what you did.
No, this was necessary.
If you want to have it by then, if you want to wait another month, then there'll be a little bit more flexible time.
So my Robert's Rules question would be, do you have to pass it from this committee to have it on exec rather than pull it back to Human Services Committee and then jump leapfrog to exec? John?
Okay, so a little bit of indulgence. My recommendation for you to ever do this in the future is to just simply push it forward another month to the same committee. It's already passed the previous committee. By sending it back to Human Services, you're not actually going to workshop it in Human Services. You're going to send it to staff. Staff's going to work up the changes that they've kind of elicited from you as far as what you want, and then they can bring it back right here. That's the fastest way to do this. Now, if you guys really are going to send it back to Human Services and the Human Service Committee is going to workshop this, yeah, the only way to do that, to answer the question you're kind of alluding to, is to have Madam Chair do it for you. That's why I'm saying to you, the best way to handle this kind of in the future is to simply just push this to the next month's meeting and say, over the next
Right.
30 days, staff do the following things, and then bring back an amended version of this for the following one, then it passes here and then it goes right on to exec. Because you have to hit every standing committee with jurisdiction. And by doing it that way, then you don't have to run it back to human service, pass, and then pass it back again here in finance.
John, I was just texted that this didn't originate at Human Services, it originated here.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be pushed back,
Back to human
Right.
services then. Yeah, all
Well,
right.
whoever texted.
Point of order.
Point of order, Miss.
If it's, so even if it wasn't originated in human services, we're not allowed to send it back to human services. I don't feel that this is a discussion for finance. I feel that we should have this discussion in a meeting that maybe isn't as tight in terms of time with a lot of things where we can have a little freer discussion. That was my intent in having it go to human services. If my language is incorrect in using the word send back, I would like to say, let's send it to human services.
So what I would say is, no, I don't think your language is incorrect. Now that we found out it's originating here, I mean, then technically, yeah, you would send to human services. What I'm kind of talking about is more this idea of, with all due respect to the board, you all really don't talk things out and like make changes to things in meetings. That's not really how it works. It's done by staff in the interim, and then you guys take votes and you make comments on whether you want to make minor changes. You'll make minor changes, but like wholesale differences where we're talking about how to figure out grants, stuff like that, that's going to have to be done by staff. So if you guys want to send it to human services, that's fine. What I would recommend, just like just generally thinking about this is when you want to make wholesale changes to stuff, just simply leave it in place, because when you send it back, now it's got to go back through 2 different places. But if it originated here, it's still going to have to go through human services. So either way, by sending it somewhere else, you're actually still going to have to go through 2 instead of 1. That's the only thing I was saying. There's nothing wrong with what you did. I'm just saying, as a general concept for everybody to think about, that is the more efficient Robert's Rules way to do it.
So am I removing my motion, your motion?
And to put it on the table.
Just table
No,
it to
if
next
it's
month.
tabled, it's gone.
Motion was to send it back to Human Services.
Send it to you.
The motion,
Send it back. which
well,
was
I can
never
pull
there.
the word back out of it and have the motion be to send it to human services, because I feel that that committee is more inclined to be able to work on this than the finance. The finance people are different than the human service people, or the human, what was your committee?
Resource.
Human services. So if I have to remove back and have a motion to send this to human services to have those experts figure it out, then I
You don't
will.
need to make a change. It's the way it stands right now is fine. You can take a vote on it.
Okay,
Indulge to move it forward
no, because I don't believe,
and allow us to have that interim meeting. You could send it back at exec.
but why? Why send it to a whole nother group of people that haven't had these conversations?
I wouldn't, we need, believe by Friday, so I can start getting it posted in time, to be released.
Yeah.
Yeah, just this item to be moved forward if it's going to be on exec.
I won't be voting to move this item forward. I don't think it's ready.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Just
if we don't,
just
if we don't
technical.
move it forward, Mr. Chair, it won't go to exec. What we're talking about is sending it to human services to review and then come back.
Yeah, Mr. Leonard's correct. Even if you passed it here, if it's not gone to human services yet, it can't go to exec unless Madam Chair uses her authority.
Send it back, we'll call a special meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have a second to that motion.
so you don't need it by this.
Who
Friday.
wants the motion?
You have Surges and Juby already on that motion.
To send it to human
Not back, just
services.
send it to.
To human services.
So now we just do roll call.
You guys gonna do a Monday meeting?
We'll figure out the meeting date, right? Just call the vote. We'll.
Yeah,
We got, well, a discussion first.
we've already.
No, we beat it to death, sir. Yeah.
I feel that we requested Jamie to act as sort of a consultant on this from the finance committee. And she was our, to give her expert participation in it. That's how we got where we are. It didn't really, it's not really the human resources that discussed it.
We're
It's
go-
her expertise that we were looking for.
Yeah, we'll bring it back there and I think we have enough input from everybody to take into
Okay,
consideration.
You're
and
willing to do
massage.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
I
willing
think
to,
that's,
we're willing to do that.
okay. I think that's the important thing, but I think it was
The idea in the beginning was to get the expert opinion from our HR. So, good. Any other discussion?
Yeah, if,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not sit on this committee, but as the committee chair of two departments that are, one is largely grant funded and the other one is special revenue, I would love to be in on the discussion if you do not do what Anita suggested.
All right, Subway.
I'm all in.
You're in.
All right, thank you.
it's
I
going to be a
appreciate
big
that.
meeting. 24 people, 24
Yeah,
sandwiches.
oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
What I think is important is that there has been recommendation that are noted in the minutes. So those recommendations that have been made by the board members for potential changes have to be noted. And I would like to make sure that whoever is going to be drafting this new version of this resolution, we have the original copy and we can have an amended copy. So then what goes to Human Services, there can be a comparison so we don't forget the validity of the great points were made in this discussion. So we're not starting from scratch, and then we can determine what changes are going to be made as appropriate.
Very good.
Just in clarification, I am somewhat confused. Are you looking to have this, sir? Mr. Berman, do you want this on executive? Or you said you're going to move, now hold on, let me just clarification, please. It's going to be moved to HR, but then I hear there's going to be a special meeting that's going to occur very quickly. So it's going to go next month in April after exec.
I would like to hold a special meeting prior to exec.
So you're looking at having this on executive. That's all I need to know.
I would.
So
I would
Well,
pass that
executive is
through.
next Wednesday.
finance.
Whoa. So exec is going to be next Wednesday and we need it on when?
And Tuesday is not a,
9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I need to know.
So it'd be Monday.
Mr. Chairman, if we don't move it forward from finance, it can't go to exec.
That's correct. But if you're not ready,
We're not
however,
ready.
I would like to have it on. And if you don't want to, ready for that discussion, we can pull it back
Yeah, let's.
on
pull it
exec.
back.
So thank you. I just needed to know if this is going to be voted upon.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
I'm having a hard time following this because I made a motion to move it to Human Services because I don't think it's ready to go to exec.
Yes.
And now I'm hearing that you need to know by Friday for it to go to exec and he needs to rush the meeting. Why are we all of a sudden rushing this meeting? We need to take time to get everybody to participate, get our ducks in order. One more month isn't going to matter as long as we're actually moving forward on this. So what actually are we voting on now?
The motion, Leslie's motion was to move it to Human Services,
And you second.
and I seconded that. That's what we're voting on. The conversation after that was to possibly expedite a Human Services meeting so that we can stay on schedule of moving this to exec, because it is my understanding that there is an urgency for this.
One more month? One more month is
You
gonna,
know what? I'm just one vote of 23, so I think there's an urgency. Human Services does allow us the ability to host that meeting in a proper format for the Opens Meetings Act, where we can invite elected officials as well as department heads for a roundtable discussion and say, I think what we heard was consistently 3 items that need to be addressed. What I didn't hear was anybody offering a solution for those 3. So I think what's important is that we all get in a room and say, what can we come up with on this that will be best served for everybody? And Leslie, this is really uncharted ground. So if the whole thing blows up and we have to go an extra month, so be it. But I would be willing to make the effort.
I'm just, if I may, I'm just saying that I think the time constraint to get it on next executive is way too tight for us to do due diligence to this. That's why I wanted to send it back. And if it goes to the following exec in May, or then it goes to finance, and then it goes to the following exec in May, I don't see 1 month is going to prevent us from moving this forward, but I see us rushing it as creating a great possibility of unintended consequences, and I don't want to do that.
Agreed.
Mr. Roth.
I agree with Ms. Juby. The whole purpose of getting this out front is to start the discussion. It wasn't expected to be perfect at all. It's more of a draft. And Ms. Juby had shared some good reasons what we need to tweak. The next human services is April 9th. So the question is, would we have a special one before the human service or take it up in human service?
If you're asking, my opinion is, I wouldn't want this conversation in a standard human service.
Okay, so we would have a
I would want
special
it-
one.
I would want the pizza party, free flow of dialogue
Okay.
and thought processes.
Staff is agreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was going with it. And while that might not fit the normal mold, yeah, but that is not intended to cause a rush. Yeah, you know what I mean?
No.
So I'm okay calling the vote and moving this to
Okay.
human services. We'll discuss it past that.
And right now, there's nothing on the calendar for April 4th or April 7th. So Friday or Monday, if you wanted to have it on those days.
It's called.
Lunch.
I would like to get, on the record what these 3 items are that we keep talking about. And I agree that this needs to be done thoughtfully and carefully. I think it needs to involve the directors, the chairman of the standing committees are going to have a lot to say about it. I certainly will. And so I don't think we need to rush this that much. It's too important.
All right, so if I may, sir, so I believe the first one, and I just lost the
3 items.
resolution. So it's one, formation of the committee.
Mhm.
The other one is the grants. And the third one was, there was one more. What was the third one?
The different departments.
The department heads having, all the department heads
Grant case
being
by
part of the committee rather than each, just a generic committee.
The directors,
The directors would have input. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not the directors, my apologies. The chair, the committee chair.
And then it.
Good job.
Mr. Chair, question?
Right.
Just a question, since I'm probably going to be at both of the meetings I think I'm hearing. First one would be a lunch as soon as we can get that together, done in an appropriate way so we don't violate any world rules. And then secondly, the Human Services Committee to take input that hopefully we gathered or heard at the lunch. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
Mr. Chair, can we call the vote on the,
Yes.
and then we can talk about all this afterwards?
Just call- yeah, just call.
Motion to
We
adjourn.
got it, we got it.
No further discussion. We're voting on whether to
Move it to
send
human
it to
services.
Human Resources,
Yeah, send it.
Human services.
to
What's this emotion? Yeah.
Send it to
emotion.
human
Send it to human
services.
service.
I have no problem the way it is right now. Oh, roll call, please, on
Juby,
Juby, I.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges,
Yes.
Tepe,
Happy, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
yes.
It is held to the next human service committee.
So now we need to vote on the original
Nope,
No, we moved it back.
we're done.
We're done.
with that one.
Yep.
Yes, finally.
Does Sanchez ask for unanimous consent to place the reports on file?
Do any questions? I don't have any old business, as a matter of fact.
Don't you?
Chairman comment?
Committee chairman's comments? Man, we,
Say no.
Mr. Berman, it's good to see you in the chair, sir.
Yes,
really
it
get
is.
down to the nitty gritty on some of these things.
Uh-huh.
All right. No executive session needed. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Leonard moves to adjourn.
Before we completely adjourn, I just, again, I couldn't have a chance to echo, our financial lion is back. Welcome.
So
Welcome.
I hope it's permanent.
Second to adjourn, please.
Chris, say aye.
All right.